Hey guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. I'm Michaela, and I'm going to talk to you about some Kindle Unlimited books that I got sold on TikTok today. Or perhaps that the authors of these books did some really good marketing on TikTok, and they got me. I read them. Let's talk about them. I have been planning to make this video for over 2 years now. If you didn't know, I was struggling a little bit with work and being able to juggle doing the stuff that I enjoy doing, like this, along with like pretty bad burnout. So 2 of the books I'm going to talk about today I read in 2022. One of them I read last month, but I finally read 3, and I felt like 3 was a good number to do for a type of video like this. First off, let's do a disclaimer. I'm talking about Kindle Unlimited titles, specifically indie-pubbed Kindle Unlimited titles. We need to take into account that these authors and these books don't have the types of resources that a traditional publishing house has. So when your book gets picked up by a traditional publishing house, you have access to multiple editors, perhaps an agent, other things that can help you in getting a finished product that is more polished than you necessarily would have on your own. When you're an indie pub author, you can definitely reach out to independent editors and things like that that would get you some of those things that you have with a traditional published author. But you have to pay for them yourself, you have to pay for the cover art yourself, or do it yourself. So it's not quite the same thing as a traditionally published book. But it does also allow you to publish something that perhaps traditional publishers are not looking for, or don't know that there is a market for, or perhaps the market isn't large enough for a traditional publisher to want to pay for the publishing of a book in that case. So you get pros, right? Like, you get really niche titles out there, you get smaller authors who maybe don't have an audience, you get things that most people, as in like the broader general public, might not be interested in, but there's definitely those select group of people who might be interested in this and will read it. So it definitely works, and TikTok is definitely also a really great form of marketing for that. It's free. An author can do whatever they want on there, and in theory it will go to the For You page of people who read that type of book, and therefore you're marketing directly to the exact audience that you want, whereas a traditional published book doesn't have all that much marketing behind it outside of people like us who are reading arcs and things like that. You might see it online there. You're not necessarily going to see these on a bookshelf in a Barnes & Noble or something like that. I am going to talk about the negative, maybe not negative, but the less successful, let's say that, parts of these books. I don't want to feel like I'm just talking down to these indie authors, because I do recognize that they don't have those resources that the traditional publishers have. But I also want to talk about some of the parts of it that maybe weren't done to the complete success that they could have been, or weren't completely succeed or hit every single mark that they could have, or at least that would have been for a great read for me. Okay, the first book on this list is an alien romance book. Does everybody remember this book that was really popular on TikTok a couple years ago? I haven't read those alien books, but I was like, if an alien book pops up on this, maybe I'll look into it. One did. The first book that I read for this mini challenge was called Alien Tyrant by the author Ursa Dax. It is the first book in the Fated Mates of the Sea Sand Warlords series. I know alien romance in general might not be for everyone, because it's pretty close to the having sex with a monster type thing, especially because the male lead in this one, I believe, has a kangaroo tail. So it's weird. Not everybody is going to want to read this. I understand why it would be hard to get something like this traditionally published if there isn't already a market for it. If you would like to see the TikTok that drew me into this one, I watched this one, I believe, from the author.
Hey, editing Michaela here. I had to remove the audio for the TikToks that are going to be showing in this. I will link the original TikToks down below if you want to see them with sound.
The general plot of this one is that Cece, who is a linguistic major, I guess, she's a college student getting a degree in linguistics, gets kind of kidnapped by her own government and sent to an alien planet with a bunch of other women. They get dropped on this planet, and unsurprisingly, they get attacked. All of the women sort of get separated and taken into different camps for all of these different types of aliens. As you would assume with a series like this, all of these women are a fated mate to some of the aliens that you meet, at least in this first book, but we're starting with Cece and Brody, I want to say, is how you pronounce his name. He had a vision from a deity in a ritual that took place at a holy space where he was shown the face of his mate, which was a creature that he's never seen before. She winds up being one of these creatures that come out of this metal thing that comes out of the sky. He takes her, obviously, because that's his mate, and shenanigans ensue. Obviously, they cannot communicate. They don't speak the same language. So being a linguistic major, Cece is actually able to slowly start to get them to communicate with each other. And it is a slow burn in the way that they are both attracted to each other from the very beginning, but there is an element of taboo, as you would expect, so it takes a little while for them to get to the spicy stuff, but it is very spicy when it does happen. Cece, though, is much more interested to begin with in finding her other friends, the other women who were dropped on this planet, and keeps trying to run away from him. He keeps dragging her back because he's like, why are you running away from me? Do you not feel that we're connected? She doesn't have the same fated mate bond type thing that he does. But obviously it's a romance, so they get together by the end. I wound up rating this one 3 stars. I think it is fine. It's pretty good. I think of the books that I read here, it's the one that sticks with me the most. Definitely the one that from 2 years ago I remember pretty clearly and I think about, and it caught me enough that I would be willing to read more books in the series. I have not yet. I think mostly because I haven't been really feeling reading a lot of romance right now, but if you're interested in alien romance and you like the fated mate thing, you like the large strong man protects small girl, both in a physical way in that he's fighting other creatures in order to protect her, and in a I'm going to make clothes or make a saddle for you because you are not designed to live on this planet and therefore it's a little bit too harsh for you, so I'm going to protect you in that way as well. Very sweet. It caught my attention and I picked it up, and I have Kindle Unlimited, so I was reading it. It was free to read for me. I'm supporting an indie author. Love that. If you're interested, it was fun. It was action-packed. There was definitely some stuff in there that piqued my interest, and I am a fated mates person. I got my start in reading romance in paranormal romance, which has a lot of fated mates, and I'm not against a weird monster. I just am not. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. It's fine by me. So yeah, if that's something that sounds up your alley, I would check it out. It's not the best book I've ever read, but for an indie pub book, definitely worth looking at least. The next book I read in July of 2022. So again, bear with me if I don't have a full handle on this one. It's been a minute since I read it, but it is called Vinny the Vampire Me. This is much more up in my comfort zone in the way that it is a paranormal romance. The TikTok that got me, though, was not about the romance part, but about a side character that I really enjoyed. So hold on, let me show you this, because this is why I picked up the book. The side character that is the librarian that this is talking about is my favorite character in the book. And obviously the library is super cool. A lot of bookish people really love libraries, but that's what caught my attention. It wasn't actually anything to do with the romance itself, but some of the world building. And again, it was correct in pegging me there, and that was my favorite part of the book. I think I did end up giving this one only 2 stars. I think of the 3 that I'm going to talk about today, this one, I wish that I could give it some more editing. I want to go in there and do a little bit of editing for it. It isn't bad by any means, but it did disrupt my reading a little bit, so if that bothers you, that is there a little bit. But again, indie pubbed, not really going to take a whole lot of points away from it because of that. There is another thing that I did have a handful of issues with, and I'll talk about that in a second. The main plot of this, though, a young woman who is a half-breed of a certain type of demon but has been raised in the like supernatural sector of the city, which is like underground New York City. She was raised by lust demons, so that's just part of her culture. Her best friend growing up was the son to like the head of the vampire mafia. She's also friends with some of the werewolves. So she kind of flits between a bunch of different supernatural factions, which do also have issues with each other, but there's also major issues with humans versus all kinds of supernatural creatures. She is currently living in the above part of New York City, like the part where humans live, because she is half human. And she's working a normal like library job, I believe, while she's there. She's hiding the fact that she's half demon, but she doesn't have all of the strength and supernatural abilities that the supernaturals have. She just has some identifying features that would kind of show her as not being 100% human, which she hides. I believe the character is also blind, so, or like at least visually impaired. So if you're looking for disability rep, that is also there. While she's there, ghouls, which are like, it's like a disease, like a zombie disease that goes after specific supernatural creatures and humans, start showing up in New York. She's then paired up with like a sexy detective for the human police department because she specializes in supernatural history, doing her research at the library, and they try to figure out what's going on. She obviously gets some help from the supernatural creatures that she's friends with, because she wants to stop the ghouls from happening because it kills people, kind of. It like turns them into zombies. Both the humans it's a danger for and the supernatural creatures it's a danger for. So in order to protect everyone that she cares about, she like goes about that. The plot was fine. I think this wound up being, I'm not the target audience of the whole book. I'm not a super big fan of like mafia stuff. There's like power dynamic things there that make me a little bit uncomfortable. I also had issues with the detective character because he is put forward as like a love triangle type person, but then like part of the way through the book he basically says racist stuff about supernatural creatures, and this person who's meant to be like, you kind of are rooting for him. He's not a bad guy, but then he's being racist, even if it's supernatural racist, and it's like kind of a gut punch where it's like, I liked this character and now I can't like him because he's being problematic, and the protagonist also feels that way because she was like kind of interested in him and now she can't be because he's being problematic. I feel like it's really hard to do that successfully, and I don't think that it did this 100%. I feel like there is a lot of racism in fantasy books like this, supernatural racism, and I'm almost at the point where I'm like, why does it need to be there? Why do we need to do supernatural racism? It's really hard to do that, because if you like a character and they're racist but you're still trying to make them redeemable, like, are you saying the same thing about racists in real life? Are they redeemable? At the same time, everyone's a little bit racist, so is it just a product of his raising? Does he need to be interacting with more different types of people? Like, there's definitely like ways to talk about that, but I don't know necessarily that a romance book is the place to have that discussion. It made me a little bit uncomfortable, but again, I enjoyed a lot of the world building. I enjoyed a lot of the side characters, in particular in this one, which is common for me in general. I usually prefer side characters to like the main cast. I think there is a second book in this series, but I'm not sure that I liked it enough to want to read more in this particular series. But if you're a fan of like urban fantasy, especially like the mystery-based romantic urban fantasy stuff, it might be worthwhile picking up for you. If you like mafia romances, it might be worth picking up for you. I think, again, because that TikTok wasn't about the actual book itself. It wasn't about the main characters or the main plot. It was about this like side character, and it was my favorite part. It got me. It was my favorite part. So, successful marketing on the part of the author. It got me to read the book, even if I wasn't 100% sold on it. The last book that I want to talk about today is Jinxed by Tori Heat. It is technically, it looks like the third book in a series, but it's a standalone. It is a Why Choose, I guess, reverse harem, one lady and three dudes romance. Also slightly paranormal. Let me play the TikTok that got me interested in it so that you can see what it was that I got piqued by. One of my all-time favorite paranormal books was a ghost and a vampire romance, so when I see ghosts pop up, it always intrigues me. There is an element of that that's interesting because generally ghosts are not corporeal, they can't be touched. So doing a romance with a character that can't physically do the sexy times, I sometimes can be sexier because there's a lot of more talking, a lot more romance built up that way, and for somebody who's ace, I love that. This was a bit misleading because the house isn't actually haunted. These characters are physically trapped in like a temporal loop where they're like stuck in a house forever, like physically never aging, but they're there physically, they're just trapped and they can't leave. A young woman who decides to buy this old abandoned house. It looks nice on the inside when she looks in the windows, but she basically buys it sight unseen. Nobody goes in to tour it. It's just been there on its own. It's a little dilapidated on the outside, but the inside looks good, so she buys it. When she comes to move in, she ends up getting into the building and finds out that, oh, no, the building actually has these three guys that are staying in it. Come to find out, they each have been trapped in the building at different points in time. The person who built the house himself was the first one, and he was the one who was cursed with the house, and then two other men who, for varying reasons, wound up in the building themselves. She ends up building a relationship with all of the men. Again, it is a why choose romance, so she does stuff with all of them. It is high heat. There are a lot of sex scenes, and the basic plot is just them trying to figure out how they can get out of the house, obviously. I wound up giving this one 2.5 stars. Not for any, like, major issues, but I did feel like these guys were kind of one-dimensional. That was the first thing. Like, each of them is, like, a very stereotypical guy. It's under 300 pages, and it's really hard to do romances with that many people in that short amount of time. You don't get a lot of time to see them, and again, it was more like, here's the, like, drunk guy who's sad and depressed because of what's going on. Here's the guy who's thrown himself into research to try and break the curse, so he's like very literary and reserved. And here's the guy who's aloof and grumpy because he doesn't like people are in his house. They keep getting trapped in here with him, and he just kind of has accepted his fate and is grumpy that other people are also trapped in here with him. So she's in here with these like three kind of archetypical cardboard cutouts of men. There's a bunch of sex scenes. The other thing that I had like a slight issue with is that there's at least one of them who like outwardly talks about being bisexual, and there definitely are sex scenes and threesomes that are happening in here, but they're all sex scenes just with the girl. And I feel like when you have someone who openly talks about being attracted to men, you have characters that are not just willing but actively participating in threesomes, when all of the sexual acts are only ever focused on the woman, it makes me feel a little bit weird. Like, I feel like if you're going to have a relationship, like, y'all should all have a relationship together. If you're going to become this, like, little polycule, all four of you together, y'all need to have relationships with each other as well. And these men have been trapped in this building for 100 years for one of them, however long, and they haven't done anything with each other ever until this girl shows up. It's weird. Like, I get that most of the readers of romance are going to be the women, so it makes sense that there would be a focus on the women, but at the same time, you want me to believe that all of a sudden they're cool with doing sex stuff just because now there is the, like, plausible deniability of a lady being involved. It's hard, and it was a little bit uncomfortable with it. But, again, read it all the way through. The plot was interesting. The characters were not 100% where I wanted them to be. But at the same time, I enjoyed it. I read it. TikTok got me. I got grabbed. So there's some books that TikTok sold to me, and I did end up reading. I didn't 100% love them. They aren't 5-star reads, but they weren't bad in any case. And if they sound like something that you would be interested in, it might be worth grabbing on your own.